Dear students, in this module, we will be focusing on feminization of aging. As you are aware, elderly themselves are vulnerable, and furthermore, multiple vulnerability is one of the major issues which elderly experiences. Multiple vulnerability in the sense, already they being 60 plus, they become vulnerable. Furthermore, due to specific issues related to their gender, their class groups, the geography in which they are living, and several other aspects also contributes individually or collectively in influencing their quality of life. One of the important aspects in vulnerability, especially multiple vulnerability, is that feminization of aging is another important aspect which we need to pay attention. In the sense, among elderly, when we compare males and females, there is a huge differences that exist in their quality of life, way of living, and also the issues that contributes for their quality of life. Female elderly are most vulnerable in terms of their living conditions in their quality of life, given the context in which they are situated in a country like India. The outline of the presentation today is going to cover feminization of aging, its demographic profile, female elderly issues and concerns, their living arrangements, their health issues, issues related to income security, social participation of elderly women, elder abuse, other vulnerabilities, and at the end we will discuss what are the possible solutions that the programs and policies have to address for improving the quality of life of female elderly in our society. As you have mentioned earlier, population aging is often called a silent revolution, a compelling demographic phenomenon with several implications to socio-economic and cultural aspects. All of these aspects influence the quality of life of older persons in general and more particularly of older women. The sex ratio of the elderly has increased from 938 women to 1000 men in 1971 to 1033 in the latest census of 2011. It is projected to increase to 1060 by 2026 with variations across states, given the insignificant decline in mortality among males, particularly during adult and older years. It's all very important to know that when we talk about the size of elderly population, it is more and more female elderly who are coming to 60 plus age bracket thanks to the higher life expectancy and also the way in which they are located in our society. It is helping them to improve the higher life expectancy among them, which contributes for higher proportion in the 60 plus age group. Now, if you look at the demographic profile of elderly and also see the gender-wise variations, they are all not in favorable to elderly women. Whether you talk about the literacy, whether you talk about work participation, the marital status, the way in which the sex ratio is increasing. So, it is very important all these dimensions have to be seen. For instance, when you talk about sex ratio, as general population, sex ratio is not in favor of females, whereas in the case of older population, it is highly favorable for females. In the sense that clearly shows that high sex ratio exists among 60 plus, which is highly favorable for female elderly. And that clearly indicates that in terms of number of years for them is added, but in terms of quality of life for them is highly questionable. Now, what are the broad issues and concerns that female elderly in India are experiencing? Gender disparities exist at all ages, but when women become old, the consequences of engendered roles become more explicit. Poverty is inherently gendered in old age when older women are more likely to be widowed, living alone, with no income and with fewer assets of their own and fully dependent on family for support. The BKPS survey, for instance, has shown that households headed by older women are poorer than those headed by older women. Similarly, few older women than men accrue personal income or assets, and financial dependency among older women is as much higher at higher levels of age. While living alone is more common among older women than older men, it is equally true that majority of older women live with their children or grandchildren, and they seem to better accept and cope with such realities of aging. The other important aspects some of the latest studies have shown was that loss of spouse is a significant, and also it enhances the vulnerability aspects among the aging people. For example, more women experience this type of vulnerability as they live longer than men. Many older women live without their spouse and experience a shift in living arrangements in old age. 1 in 10 women over the age of 60 years live alone, and many widowed women have rare contact with their non-co-residing children. In general, living with family, particularly the son, is the most common arrangement among older women. They are forced to work out a new care receiving environment with children and daughters-in-law that can put them through greater stress also sometimes. Other aspects mainly include, in terms of their health, for instance, many older women rate their health as poor and experience relatively low mental health status. 1 in 5 older women rated their health to be poor. More than half of older women indicate signs of mental distress according to measures of subjective well-being as brought out by the latest BKPI study. They also carry higher burden of both acute and chronic morbidity than their male counterparts. Awareness and use of the Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana (RSBY) or the health insurance program offered by the government among older women is negligible. Similarly, income insecurity is a significant important aspect when we talk about vulnerability among older women, and also its influence on their health status. More than 4 out of 5 women have either no personal income at all or very little income. Income security further increases as age advances. Only a small percentage of older women are reporting no income. Actually, they receive a meager amount through social pension. Economic dependency among older women is therefore very high. 1/3 of older women do not own any assets, but more widowed women own assets compared to married women because assets are generally owned by the husband, but after his death they are passed on to his widow. Only 1/3 of widowed women receive social pensions. Among the poor, awareness of social pension schemes is higher among elderly men than women in both urban and rural areas. The accentuated economic vulnerability and poverty of older widowed women is found across all surveyed states. The other aspects which we need to understand is about their participation. For instance, aging among women is accompanied by low work participation, low earnings, and high economic need. Poverty drives over 10% of older women to work largely in informal sector with low wages, no retirement or post-work benefits. Further, work participation rate differs significantly between married men to the extent of 41% and widowers 24%, but there is no such decline for older women, suggesting that higher economic need for widowed older women to work even after death of their spouse. This all have an important bearing on their low quality of life. About 70% of older women perceive having some role in family decision making. Many are active in various activities such as prayers, yoga, household chores, taking care of grandchildren, and similar such familial roles. Their social networking outside home is also reasonable, albeit limited to religious activities, visiting family, or chatting with the neighbors. Over 1/3 of older women having some personal income feel that they are making useful contributions to family expenditure. This is an important aspect of aging with dignity. When we talk about elder abuse, it is very important to analyze with respect to gender. Most likely victim of elder abuse is a female of very advanced age, role-less, functionally impaired, lonely, and living at home with someone, primarily their adult child, spouse, or other relatives. A dependent elderly with physical or mental impairments may be perceived as a burden by the caregivers and resulting stressful situation which may most likely lead to the abuse and neglect of the elderly person. Certain major and frequently cited explanations about elder abuse are cycle of abuse or intergenerational transmission of violence, dependence because of impairments, intra-individual dynamics, stress, negative attitudes towards the elderly, and social isolation. Older widowed women are one of the most vulnerable groups who needs special attention. The cumulative effects of a lifetime of nutritional deprivation, hazardous occupation, heavy work, continuous childbearings, and low self-esteem levels leaves them physically and mentally frail, while widowhood often leaves them destitute. Besides female issues, they also experience due to other vulnerability issues like those who become disabled among them, fragile older persons, and those who work outside the organized sector of employment. They all adds to the multiple vulnerability among the female elderly. So, in that way, it will further aggravate the issues of their quality of life, so that the solutions becomes very complex. So, there is a continuous effort that is required in bringing out them to the mainstream so as to see that their enhancement of quality of life should be the topmost priority for any government and also for any organizations which are catering to the needs of the elderly woman. What are the ways we have to address these issues? It is required to design and implement policies that would provide minimal income and social safety networks for elderly in need, women and men alike. Amend laws that discriminate against women with regard to property and inheritance rights. This is very important for us to see that they own their property so that their financial independency, the security, all these issues can be addressed with their own properties. Create employment opportunities for older women. In this regard, we need to provide more and more income generating schemes for older women so that at the old age they will feel that they are also contributing to society, and they, by earning, they will also feel that they have a financial independency, so that the elderly will not feel that they are unwanted in their family and society, so that young members also will respect and also give them space that is required for them as part of the dignity of their life. Free of discrimination and ensure adequate employment benefits. In this regard, important that we need to introduce community-based income generating schemes for the benefit of the poor older women. Once we provide access to them and educate them, provide necessary skills, it will automatically empower them to associate. That is why the local level income generating schemes have to be connected, so that elderly women will also benefit from those schemes and programs. Other important aspect which we need to know is the support from family caregivers. Caregivers, especially the young members of the family, have to play an important role when we are discussing about the female elderly issues. For instance, already when they have lost their spouses, they have become widows, and furthermore, in the absence of their spouse and other support, they will become more depressed, isolated. That is why the family caregivers should play a very, very important role to see that they will be always there available for the elderly females, so that their counseling, their involvement will make a lot of difference in enhancing the mental health status of the female elderly. Furthermore, when the caregivers know that their elderly issues are important for them to address, such a sensitivity on the part of caregivers will greatly help them to show all the issues related to elderly more meaningfully. They can understand, work it out the possible solutions, and also wherever the programs and schemes which are meant for the female elderly, they can facilitate in taking their elderly females to those organizations, to the departments concerned in terms of whether it is old age pensions or some health schemes and other programs, so that all social security schemes, if they are meant for this elderly woman, can be utilized by them. And that is one of the important aspects. Is there is a huge gap that exists between awareness, attitudes and utilization of various social security schemes, and furthermore the differences are very high among female elderly population. For that, caregivers should play a very important role to see that their elderly females are having a correct information, they have a access to those facilities by taking them to the offices concerned, to the agencies concerned, and to see that their names are enrolled, they are getting the correct benefit, and also we should see that such benefit directly helps them in improving their quality of life. So some of these important aspects that needs, also we need to know that there is a requirement of to educate healthcare providers to recognize and address the specific needs of older women. Usually, given the reproductive and child health as a major emphasis in developing countries like India, most of the health workers will be focusing their attention, their effort and the resources only on reproductive age women and to the children. Furthermore, it is very important to realize that given the population aging and given the feminization of aging that are occurring, healthcare workers, especially female healthcare workers, should also be encouraged to focus and pay attention to the healthcare needs of the female elderly in their communities, so that whenever they go to field visits to those communities, they can also meet the elderly women, understand their health issues, so as to find out what the specific issues are to be addressed from their angle, and also they can facilitate in connecting to the other departments, so that the overall health care of the female elderly will improve. The other dimension which we need to know is to provide mental health care services that target older women, recognizing their diversified backgrounds. Mental health, as most of the studies have clearly shown, that mental health issues are a very important dimension for female elderly, especially when they attain widowhood, when in the absence of a spouse, and especially when the care and abuse is coming up. When the care is lacking and abuse is increasing, they become furthermore vulnerable. In that sense, the mental health problems, depressions, isolation, loneliness, feeling redundancy, they all increases, ultimately affecting their mental health. So that is why without having any specific time schedules, we need on a regular basis interventions by the health workers, support systems to be strengthened, and so as to see that the elderly woman, especially their mental health, is very important for us to address. Similarly, we need to provide older women who are suffering from chronic illnesses to access to in-home assistance services. Given their old age, given their physical conditions, and also lack of adequate financial support, it is very important that we have to address in-home assistive services and provide them at their doorstep, especially for those who are suffering from chronic illnesses. Other aspects of interventions should be to encourage functionally challenged elders to maintain their independence by providing non-medical home care services or appropriate assistive devices. This is another important aspect which we need to address, because more and more such elderly women are coming into the society thanks to very high life expectancy and relatively the low quality of life which the elderly women are experiencing. The other aspect is to identify and address the diversity needs of older women. It is not uniform, the issues which they are experiencing, they are of wide diverse nature and they are also heterogeneous nature. So for that, first of all, we have to identify, and then appropriate strategies have to be worked out to address those issues. Similarly, support their participation in educational opportunities for sharing personal experiences, histories and accumulated observation. They have wealth of information, wealth of educational which are becoming not from formal angle point of view, but very culturally they will have a lot of historical important events they will be knowing, how best such things can be accumulated. That is another aspect which we need to address. Similarly, encourage older women to form their own support groups and networks. Instead of waiting for young members to always come forward and support them, we have to promote how best older women themselves have to form their own support groups and networks. Such things will make them to understand in the peer group setting what are the problems the other members are experiencing and what way they have to support each other and form a network for empowering to see that their needs can be addressed by the right agencies. Other dimension is to create an enabling environment for older women to focus on their personal development, including new careers, participation in public life and politics. So this is one of the important aspects, because with all their experience, with all their networking, if they can come to the mainstream on political life by having their own percent of reservations for them, and also the adequate exposure if we can provide about importance of their coming into the mainstream by joining in the political lives, it will make a lot of things for the community and for the society in general, that their participation is definitely make a meaningful contribution by them. Similarly, work towards alerting misconceptions of aging and eliminating negative stereotypes through school, the family, work environment, media and advertising. These are other important, that how we can utilize media in promoting positiveness of aging among females, and also to highlight what are all the negative stereotypes that exist. Similarly, how best the positive aging among female elderly can be promoted. In that sense, media should come forward and play its important role in this regard. Other aspect is to foster social support services at the local level for women to communicate with other women, so that such social support services will greatly help how best they all can come together and contribute for each of these people, and how. At the end, I would like to focus that when we see the feminization of aging, it is in a big way coming up in all societies of the world. Feminization of aging, in the sense more and more female elderly issues are increasing, not only in their number but also the complexity of the issues that they are confronting in our society. Given these complexities, it is very important that not only addressing aging issues in general, we also should understand among the elderly in general what are the specific age groups and specific groups of elderly who require on a priority basis our attention from program and policies and schemes point of view. One of the dimensions in this regard is the gender dimension. That is where feminization of aging comes in a big way. So when female elderly are more vulnerable and multiple vulnerabilities they are experiencing, especially in developing countries like India, we have to evolve suitable program schemes and to see that their quality of life will be enhanced, and so that they will feel that they are part of the process of development, and also their dignity, their independency, their participation in the various development projects will be much more meaningful, so that they become one of the important vital human resource when we talk about the positive and successful aging, healthy aging, active aging in our society.